All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
And today's guest is Matt Doogue. Matt is a professional photographer with a passion for capturing unique and stunning macro shots, focusing on capturing the intricate beauty of the natural world. He's worked with some of the most respected names in the industry and has been featured in National Geographic, BBC Earth and Canon. His new book on macro photography is now available at Amazon. Matt has not been shy about his mental health struggles, and his openness, vulnerability and honesty is refreshing and amazing. He's so helpful in breaking down the stigma BS that we as men are holding in society about what makes us men and what's acceptable for male mental health. He's a dedicated conservationist and wildlife enthusiast who uses his platform to help create debate and understanding on men's mental health, as well as to raise awareness and support for environmental issues. From highlighting the beauty of the natural world, leading outdoor trips and holidays, and teaching others, he's helping to educate and inspire others to protect our planet's natural state. And in this interview, we discuss how you can help your mental health and how you can use your passions to discover yourself and change your life for the better. Please note, we do cover some topics that you may find emotional, triggering and upsetting, but I feel these are key topics that need to be discussed, and Matt talks freely and openly about his journey and what he's found to work. And these are messages that need to be shared to today's men. We need to have these conversations, to have these discussions, to talk freely about who we are as men, what we need help and support with, and learn how to live life on our own journey and terms. And now, let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for coming on. It's an absolute joy. I found you initially through a post that you made on your social media, but you have some of the most amazingly beautiful artistic work as well. How would you explain what you do? Because it's quite a unique job and sort of creative enterprise you're doing. But how do you explain what you do?
I mean, there's probably various ways. I photograph bugs. It's probably the quickest easiest way of saying it. I photograph very small things and make them look big, if only if it worked in all aspects of life. But yeah, that's basically what I do. I photograph insects, spiders, lizards, amphibians, snowflakes, ice, anything that's small, minuscule, and is almost hidden. I want to reveal it and show it to people. And it ties in very well with my mental health and the whole ethos around mental health and who we are as people. And when we hide away behind fakeness and fake personas and fake masks, etc., etc. So it all comes full circle for me. But yeah, that's basically what I do is I photograph very small things and I make them life size. And I hope that through my photography, I get to inspire people and make them ask questions about things, you know?
Do you think that's part of like what inspired you initially? Because the macro photography lets you sort of expose parts of society that we don't get to see, and it shines a light and it kind of blows it up into so we can actually see it. Is that part of the joy, and also links to the mental health where we kind of all as men we hide it, we all try to be powerful, the I'll sort it on my own kind of attitude, whereas actually the worst thing we can do as men?
Yeah, there's a very poetic element to it. Originally, I was always into nature, wildlife, and insects. I remember being a young boy sat in front of the TV watching David Attenborough on a Sunday night. That was my thing. but growing up in the area in which I grew up in Salford, and this is a story, you'll be able to hear online me talk about this, but them things weren't cool. So as teenagers, you conform, don't you? You conform to your peers, you conform to the society around you, you conform to whatever the norm is at the time that's being sold to you, the meta, the alpha, whatever you want to call it. And you as a person, your uniqueness, your creativity, your personality, it disappears. You become this mold of what is around you. You're sort of shaped by the society and the peers, and you lose yourself. Um, so the interest was always there, but it very much became lost. It very much became ignored. And then through my years of being a teenage lad and being a bit of an idiot and a bit of a dickhead and doing silly things and being with silly people, let's just say, like I say, you become this fake person. And then when I had my breakdown, my first real heavy breakdown, it was almost that I wanted to rediscover who I was. And I was like, well, I'm going to just tap back into these happy moments from when I was a kid. And, I highlighted what they were. And it was things like insects, photography, nature, being outside, orienteering. I've got these vivid memories, and the memories slowly slip away as you get older, but there's always one or two that stick out to me. And I remember orienteering as a kid in school and just loving it, being like, this is mint, being out in nature, in the woods, and all of that. So I'm
Mm.
like, I'm going to start going on these hikes with my wife's uncle at the time. And he had a camera and he was showing me his photography side of things. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And got into the photography. He sold me a camera. I mean, without him selling me that camera, my photography journey probably would never have started, or it wouldn't have started in the way it did. And I tried every genre of photography, and I'd started learning about it, and it was something new, and it was something I'd never explored before. It wasn't Photography wasn't a thing in my school at that time. It wasn't anything that I even knew to be a hobby. Photography for me was the teacher coming in and taking me picture for school photos. It was car magazines and stuff like that. I'd never thought of it of anything else other than those things. So when I
Mm.
realized, well, this photography opened up the world to loads of things, I was really interested and really intrigued. And I tried every genre. I went through like portraits and landscapes and doing daft little things in the kitchen, like light painting at night and just using slow shutter speeds to paint words like you do with sparkle. Or, I was just exploring this creativity. And that was like almost exploring myself again. And it was almost exploring my passions and what I wanted to do, not what other people wanted me to do. I was doing what I thought was cool, not what other people thought was cool. And I remember I was posting the stupidest of images, just like poker chips that I'd lit really nicely. And I was like, wow, that looks amazing. And I'm posting it on Facebook, and people are like, the fuck is this? And I thought it was cool. And I'm like, well, you're going to see it and you're going to look at it, say it's cool. And then I've discovered this genre called macro photography. And immediately I was enthralled. I was obsessed. It was these sick, amazing little creatures up close and just in your face, and claws and mandibles and antlers and antlers, antennas and everything that was just there. And I was just like, this is incredible. And I was down a rabbit hole, man. I was just like, macro photography was my thing. And at the time, whilst learning all this photography, I was unpacking a lot of stuff, trauma, thoughts, and feelings. But I was also going through a mental health crisis at the same time. And they kind of came to head at the same time. It was very surreal, a very strange moment of my life.
I love how you come alive when you talk about macro, when the photography. You can see that creative. It's almost like how I found with the podcast, because when I was a kid, you would go out and you'd fail. You play football, you'd learn skills, you'd go out in dinghies and you go explore and you do all these sorts of things. But then as an adult, suddenly oh no, people might judge you. Oh no, you can't do that. That might affect your career. Be married by 30, have kids by 40, do X. And it's a very similar, because when I found your post, I've been struggling with depression, I've had OCD, intrusive thoughts, and I know what it's like when you're sitting there thinking, I don't have that life that I'm supposed to have. And
mm,
you start beating the shit out of yourself, but you don't want to
mm,
take a risk. And I definitely feel like my contract at my current job is coming to an end. I decided to take a severance package, and I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. And when I found your post where it said, you can be here at the lowest point and you can actually find yourself, don't you know, like the best is yet to come. That
mm.
really inspired me. And I know it helps so many people. But as men, you lose yourself because you're trying to portray a character rather than the authentic version of yourself, which is
Yeah.
a very long way of saying, can you tell me a little bit about your, like, what were you like as a youngster? Because you've talked there about, going out and exploring with your uncle, etc. But you also were a
Mm,
carer for your mum. How do
mm.
you think that shaped? Did you think you were expected to lead, to be in charge of things, and not to kind of explore? You took on responsibility at such a young age.
Yeah, I mean, so my mum, um, rest her soul now, but she had multiple sclerosis, and I was probably her main carer from the age of maybe about 14, 15. I was always caring for her in some aspect of my life, but I became a real
Mm,
full-on main carer from the age of 14, 15. And that 100% contributed to my mental health crisis because I mean, I know this now, but I didn't know it then. I was suffering with abandonment issues. So, abandonment issues are usually from people who are adopted or parents have given them up or they've got no, that type of thing. And they suffer with this abandonment issue. And essentially, that's what I was having because my mum was taken away from me. I didn't have your normal mum. My mum was in a wheelchair. I was at the end of all of her frustration. So, when she was frustrated that she couldn't do anything, it was me who got it in the neck. At the same time, I was having to do my own washing, my own cleaning. She had carers who would come in and do hers, but I would often be making the meals. So, there was almost a part of me that was restricted to do anything. I had to stay with my mum and do things with my mum, and then I could go out and do my own thing with my friends. But it wasn't always like that. Um, and I probably was a quite rebellious, and as a young boy growing up in school, I wasn't popular. I wasn't picked for your sport teams. I was the least sportiest person you'll fucking know. I mean, I've got two left feet. I cannot even kick a ball. You know what I mean? I can't run a bath. I'm that terrible. I mean, it's like, I am the least athletic person back then. And I see it now with young boys who are walking around and they're just struggling to make sense of the world and struggling to fit in with society. And that was me, hood up, dark clothing. And I became an idiot because other idiots found me funny and other idiots found me relatable. And I found them relatable because they were acting like me. But that was never really me. It was the mask.
mm,
It was the fakeness. It was, well, I'm suffering with these abandonment issues. I don't feel like I've got anyone. These boys, these people, this crew, whoever you want to call them, they're kind of accepting me a little bit. So I'm gonna latch on to that because I don't have anyone else kind of accepting me. Now my mum loved the bones off me, obviously, but she could never express that in a way in which a normal mum and son's relationship would happen. It just didn't happen because she was in a wheelchair. She couldn't move her legs, she couldn't move her arms. She has to operate with her head and touch buttons. She wasn't your typical mum. So I never had that real bond. Obviously, as a little boy, I had that bond, but when you're a teenage lad, when you need that guidance, no dad in the picture, and it's just like, well, where are you going to get that emotional connection from? Where are you going to get that support network? Well, it's going to be your peers, isn't it? It's going to be your friend group, and those were my people who I found a connection with. And you kind of do fall into this trap. And they say it's don't fall in with the wrong crowd. They say it often enough. You hear your parents say, "Oh, they fell in with the wrong crowd. They fell in with the wrong crowd." Well, sometimes they've got no other crowd that they can go to, so they go to that crowd regardless. And I see it so much now, and I see it. I've seen it for the past 10, 15 years, and I see these young boys and I've done talks in schools where I've seen them act up in the class, try and be the clown, try and be funny. And it's for the attention. And when you say that it's for the attention, people think they just want to be looked at. No, they don't want to be looked at. They want to feel included. They want to feel part of something. They want to feel like they've got purpose. They want to feel like they've got something to do when they get up in the morning. And that's why they act up. That's why they be idiots. That's why they do stupid things, because people will say, nice one, well done, haha, you're funny. And then they feel something, because the chances are when they go home, they don't feel that. Do you know what I mean? So that was my childhood and sort of my young teens up until sort of my late teens, early 20s, and that's when things just started going out of control and spiraling out of control. And I always say it was the mask was beginning to get cracked, and those cracked appeared like depression and anxiety and paranoia and anger management. That was the cracks appearing in the fake avatar that I'd created, this fake version of me that I thought needed to be present in the world in order for me to feel loved and for me to feel part of something.
Because I think that would probably hit home to a lot of men listening just now. I mean, I've got a very academically gifted brother, a very popular sister. That did make her sound very dodgy, actually. But, you know, I mean, I always felt like I was the black sheep, you know, like, and I know what you mean when you think you've kind of, like, my dad he wasn't very good at connecting and being able, because he just didn't get it from his family. So he didn't know how to do that. And, you know, my mom was the, like, amazing person, but she had plenty of jobs and she was always out doing stuff. So I always felt like I didn't really have a guiding point. And I think that's what they have, like a lot of men. They don't have a role model. And I think it's like, you know, like Good Will Hunting, the film, where they're on about his friends, and one of them's like, oh, I don't know why he hangs out with these idiots. And they're like, because if and the guy says to him, well, if he asked any of his friends, they would take a bat to anybody. You know, they would cave the head in of somebody because they're there. It's whatever they need, they're going to help their friend. And a lot of men don't have a role model. So we look for it elsewhere and we find bad versions of role models and we try to fit in. But you're not allowed to talk about your emotions. You're not allowed to talk about feelings of rage or not fitting in, because girls can talk, but we're meant to be strong, silent. You're meant to fix your problems and be, you know, the Cary Grants, the big, strong, dominant guys. And, you know, like when people were saying about Tony Soprano going to therapy, that was, oh, don't be silly, that would never happen. And you're like, there's plenty of guys now going and doing therapy, which I've done talk therapy, CBT, NLP, and that. These things are life changing. But when we were younger, they didn't exist. How do you think, like, what were your red flags? For me, it's things like my flat starts getting messy. I've started to notice my trigger points. But did you notice your issues then, or did you slowly learn them as you grew?
I 100% had no clue. I knew I had a short temper, but I always, what would the word be here? Justified it by saying, well, I've got a disabled mum, so I've got a reason to be pissed off at the world.
Yeah.
But the reality was that was just an excuse. You know, my mum was my mum was disabled. She was disabled. Me being angry wasn't really, maybe it kind of did influence my anger, but it wasn't the sole purpose of my anger. It wasn't the source of my anger, not at all. Did it contribute to it? Of course it did. But as a young teenage lad, there was no real flags other than I just never felt like anybody give a shit about me, to be honest. I just felt like nobody ever wanted me as a friend, a real friend. Nobody ever wanted me as, you know, in their team, in their crew, other than these sort of muppets that I ended up befriending. But as a young man, you know, in my 20s, and especially now, you know, into my late 30s, I 100% recognize my flags. Like I get straight away when I'm feeling like, right, I need a day off. I need to go and do a float therapy tank session. I need to go and do a workout. I need to have a cold dip. You know, I need to have me time and just lock myself away for 4 hours on the PlayStation, you know, whatever it might be. I need to get out with my camera. My camera has been my elixir for life for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I recognize it. But some days, the thing that I want to do, which is like photography, I get mad anxiety about going out. So I don't go out. So I know the thing that can kill me essentially for the day is on the other side of that door, but I can't get outside the door. You know, it's crippling because the anxiety is crippling at times. But I do I put on weight quite easy, so I know when I'm putting on the weight, I know my mental health is dropping, you know. And there's this, I don't know if it's just the new generation and the age of social media, but there's always this like pressure to say, oh, I'm cured of my mental health problems, or that's me done now. I don't have depression. That's bullshit. It never goes away. It's there.
Mm.
It's consistently there, and it will always be there. And that acceptance of knowing that it's always going to be there is it's fundamental in you getting through life. You know, if you had one arm, you would accept that you've got one arm, and you would cope and you would make reasonable adjustments in your life, as would your friends, your peers, your family, to accommodate you with one arm. Mental health should be no different. And when you begin to realize that and you go, well, you know what? Yeah, I do struggle. I do struggle sometimes making sense of the world. I do struggle sometimes in social situations. I do struggle sometimes with worrying about things and creating scenarios in my head that might not necessarily be true. That's fine. That is absolutely fine, because that's just you. you know, some people obviously have a medical condition where they may need treatment, and some of us, men like me, you, and whoever else listening to this, might think, you know what, I just have a lot of shit going on, and I just
Mm.
have no one to talk to, and sometimes it gets too much, and sometimes I need an outlet. But recognizing the things, some people struggle to do that, and then that's why talking like in these podcasts and being so open and being so honest online and in social media helps, because they resonate with it and they go, shit, I've never thought about it like that, or you actually sound like me, or you remind me of me. And I mean, I've had people say, you remind me of my brother, and now I understand what he was going through. You remind me of my late husband, I understand what he was going through now. Or you've allowed me to be able to talk to my son because I've listened to what you've said on the podcast or in your tweets or whatever. And we can learn great things from books. There's great knowledge there, but you learn so much more from experience and hearing other people talk about what they've done in life. And I think the more we do that, the more we do things like this, men will listen and they'll be like, yeah, that's me. All right, I get it now. I do have to do this, or I might have to do that, or I might need to go here. All right, cool. And they can get on and they can move on and they can move forward. But it's tricky. It is a tricky thing to know when you're struggling. But once you've found that sort of pattern and you recognize them patterns, you can then start putting in actions to control it.
Yeah. I mean, it rings a bell. I mean, it every time I listen to one of your interviews, you're so deep and passionate and open and honest about it, and I think that really helps so many people because I can remember sitting there just thinking, what do I do now? I've got the nice house, well, the flat. I bought a car. What else? What more am I to do? And I could remember thinking, what do I do? What do I do? And I've just constantly gone through rumination, OCD, obsessive thoughts, intrusive thoughts. And it was because you can't put it out and be open and honest about, that I started feeling suicidal. I started feeling fed up of life. I started feeling like
Mm,
I would sleep in most weekends and not want to be, I would want to stay in bed rather than be awake because I thought, what's the point in life? And
mhm.
I know that there's so many people that are going through that just now. You putting this out there and helping so many people, it's life changing. And I think that's the thing is we don't get told what we're to do. Like you did that amazing thing of looking after your mom, stepping up, going in, doing all these, helping her, which probably helped her so much and she was so grateful for. But you weren't praised for it because it was expected, if you know what I mean. And at such a
Yeah,
young age, it's we don't understand that. We don't see that as a that's what you do for love. You see it
mm,
as a I've got to go. I can't go and hang out with my friends. And when I look back now, I saw my mum look after my terminal ill grandparents with cancer, and I thought, fucking hell, that's an amazing thing. Such love, and I was like, I don't know if I'm capable of that. And I found myself
mm,
judging myself based on that because I was such a selfish little prick, basically. But I always felt like me, rather than other people. And I think that's a lot of people lose their identity at that point because
mm,
we feel selfish for asking, but what about me? What about my stuff? What about my issues?
mm,
And
mm.
Was that the kind of thing that pushed you towards feeling like your suicide attempts to your feeling at that moment of just, well, I don't have value in life? And like so many guys are probably feeling at this moment because COVID took away, oh, you got a nice car. Oh, you're cool. Oh, you've got 1,000 social media likes. Oh, you're the man. Now suddenly COVID said, fuck it, you could die in minutes. Like you could have your whole family wiped out by it. All these kind of situations. There's a lot more important things in life now, and I think a lot of people have lost that identity. And I know I'm waffling, but I think I kind of feel myself in you in a way that you have that moment of kind of fuck, and I'm feeling it now, and that's why I think I really kind of feel your podcast message more because I'm 41 just now, and I'm like, what the fuck? What happened in life? I'm middle age now, going.
But this is the thing, isn't it? Right. So the clear part of your sentence there at the end was, "I'm 41 and I'm thinking, what the fuck am I doing with my life?" Or what most men might think is, "What the fuck have I done with my life?" Well, you lived. You're 41. You're still here. There's something to be hugely fucking proud of. You probably had many interactions with many people. You probably made many people smile, laugh, joke. You probably made some people's birthdays, Christmases, whatever. You've done good things. You're still here. But why do we always do that? Why do we always say, what am I going to do with my life? Like, we need to do something. Like, we need a purpose. Like, we need to tick a box, right? And that's because of society. It's conformity, isn't it? It's that you see the social media posts of maybe someone you went to school with, maybe someone you just know in the area, maybe it's some influencer, and they're smashing life, what you would see as smashing life, right? Because that's your perspective, and your perspective is different to my perspective. Your perspective of someone smashing life could be completely different to my perspective of someone smashing life. See, when you said on the conversation when we got started that you lived in the Highlands and it was very rural and there was fuck all about, to you that might have been a shit perspective for life. You came to where you live now and you're like, now there's pubs and takeaways everywhere. Whereas for me, it's the opposite. For me, it's like living out in the sticks with just sheep as my neighbours. Sounds like my idea of paradise. So perspective is completely different from everyone. And so when we compare ourselves to these other people and these things, it's the biggest thief for joy. You've seen that, but you are comparing something to something that doesn't really actually exist, and especially when it comes to social media, And my suicide attempts, and it was twice, and the first time was, I'm like, what's the fucking point? Like, I've been here for however many years. I've lost my job. This, that, and the other's happening to me. Like, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know if I can be who I want to be. And it wasn't, and you'll hear this a lot, and you'll hear people say this, it wasn't that I wanted to die. I didn't want to die. Of course not. I just wanted to fucking rest. I just wanted to stop. Like, I just wanted to be like, you know what? I'm clocking out. Clocking out. That's it. Done.
You're
And
fed
it's
up with
because,
feeling burnt out.
yeah, exactly that. I just wanted it to be like, you know what? I'm done. And you don't think about anybody else. And you'll hear a lot of people say it's selfish and this, and even the term committed suicide, which is so outdated because you committed was like committed a crime, because it used to be a crime. It used to be considered a sin. It still is considered a sin in various religions and whatever. But the term committed suicide is bullshit. It needs to stop. It's, you can use other words, but for me, it was just, yeah, I wanted it to stop. And at 18, 19, 20, however many years I was doing this for, it was a case of anybody who was older in the 30s and 40s who you might have briefly opened up to. What have you got to be stressed about at 18? What have you got to be worried about at 19? You can't be depressed. What have you got to be depressed about? And I'm like, ah. And then, the doctor's kind of like, yeah, we can help you, but we don't really know what's going on. And you get put on a waiting list. And some people don't have the time to go on a waiting list, and there was none of this. There was no podcasts. There was no interviews. There was no nothing. You might have got the odd one or two thing. And look, the awareness around mental health and suicide prevention is amazing, and it's getting better and better and better. But it means fuck all without action. And prime statistic for you here is like 20% of all NHS sort of patients or whatever is mental health related, but only 10% of the budget goes towards mental health stuff. So if it's almost making up, 1/5, but the budget is 1/10, just doesn't weigh up, does it? But you know, we are pushing things like this podcast and being open with our tweets and helping each other and Andy's Man Club and all the other amazing charities out there. We are being more vocal and we are getting these group sessions where lads are talking and everyone's coming out and they're trying to do the bit. And we will eventually get there where mental health is considered to be up there with everything else that's considered to be a real something that needs to have an interest, and they need to take a look at it and say, actually, we need to help these people. So yeah, I mean, so I was waffling on there. I get into these moments where I just go and I just start talking, but it's the suicide thing is it's just one of those things. It's hard to explain, man.
I think sometimes you can feel it kind of coming off your chest when you talk about, because I'm like, I can actually feel like I can be honest and say that because sometimes podcast hosts have this guru mentality of I'm this amazing person and no problems at all. And when I was younger, I mean, I didn't feel there, and I had the exact same reaction you had. What have you got to be? Don't be silly. And I didn't have didn't have any friends that I felt I really connected with. So I went on and did chatted online to people and all this, and I had better connections with friends in America and stuff who had never met than I did with my friends I'd grown up with. And I can remember feeling just like I was 9, and everything I achieved, people were like, oh, that's amazing. And I just felt worthless because as a man, it's almost like what you achieve, whereas a female, it's, they're all hugging each other, they're all connected, they're all deep connections. Yeah, they've got their own issues and stuff, but girls have babies. That's their purpose. With guys, what's our purpose? And it's that stupidity of thinking, and you don't know what your identity is. So, of course, you're going to punch walls, you're going to kick off, you're going to gravitate towards people that will just let you express these emotions. And I struggled, and I still do, and I still think I'm not part of. I'm sitting in a bar sometimes with friends at work, and I'm going, why am I here? I shouldn't be here. I don't fit in. I don't connect to these people. And now, the more open I've been, the more helpful it's been by saying, no, I'm not all right. I didn't go to a mate's birthday party recently because I knew I was almost on the bed feeling like I was going to burst into tears. I felt like being social. I was so tired, the noise, I just needed a rest. I needed to stop trying to be a character of a version of myself. And when I found how beautifully you were in other interviews explaining this, it's like, fuck, you get it. You're open and honest, and I'm not surprised you're helping so many people. Was there a point that you just thought, nah, enough's enough? Or because when I went to the doctors and got antidepressants, yeah, they kind of worked for a while, but I didn't put enough actions in till I exercised and tried talk therapy. And also, if I talk about it, I keep the problem alive. I need to then go and act on it. What worked for you to kind of start shining a light in that dark place you're in?
I suppose it was a mix of things. One, I didn't actually want to die. I didn't want to die. That was a key thing here. Realizing that, I was lucky enough that I had a small child and I knew I had really something here to live for. I kind of wanted to beat myself. Sounds weird, but I wanted to say to myself, "Fuck you! I'm going to destroy you. I'm gonna prove to you that you are better than what you think you are." Type attitude. I'd let so many people for so long tell me and convince me that I was shit from being in primary school, and this is like you're not picked for the football teams, or you're not picked to play sports, or you're not picked to be with the cool kids, or you're not this, you're not that, you're not the other. For so many years, people telling me that I was worthless. You know what I mean? And I'm like, fuck that, I'm going to prove to everyone that I am worth something. And I remember vividly being in the doctors, and when I eventually got to the doctors, and I didn't know what the fuck to say. Like, I was just like, well, if I start telling him what I'm thinking, he's going to be like, woof, straight to Meadowbrook. Now, Meadowbrook was the men's hospital at Salford Hospital. And I'm like, he's going to section me and boom, see you later. Because that's all we knew about mental health was people in white jackets. And we were sold this fucking story, wasn't we, by, the media, the schools, your peers, whatever. Disney movies where you have the villain who's psychotic and they're in these white coats. We're painted this picture that mental health is something that is really bad, and that you hear the term you're a schizo or you're nuts, and you hear all these nasty things growing up that you think mental health. Oh, if I've got mental health, I'm done for. Like, that's me. So when I'm in this doctor's surgery, I'm like, shit. What do I say? And I remember them calling me out, and I had a full-on panic attack because I'm like, what's going on? I actually thought I was having a heart attack. I'm like, oh well, that's me. See you later. And doctors, got me in the room, and they were like, what's wrong? And I just went, blah. And it was just verbal diarrhea. I was crying and I couldn't breathe. And I'm just like, and I was speaking, and he's like, slow down, breathe. I start from the beginning. What is going on? And I just came out with everything. And I think I was in there for like 45 minutes. I was sweating, I was dripping. I mean, at this point, I think I was like 9.5 stone. I'd lost so much weight. Wish I was 9.5 stone now, mind you. But and it was like, fuck. And yeah, and they were like, right, basically give me a shopping list. When it went out, it's like, I'm diagnosed with this. You need to go here for anger management. You need to wait on this list to speak to this person about this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, fuck, I'm fucked. I'm broke. That's me. I'm done. And they prescribed me antidepressants. And I think I took them for like 3 weeks. And this weird thing started. Probably like the little tiniest spark from there was like, I don't need these antidepressants. Now, I will not say this to anyone. If a doctor prescribes you antidepressants, take them because some people need them. And I will never say, don't take antidepressants. That's not what I will ever say. They didn't work for me personally. And that was a personal choice that I took when I said, fuck this, I'm going to do it without them. I am not advocating for you to do that. I'm not advocating for anyone who's listening to this to do that. This is just my journey, and I'm just telling you that experience. And it was literally the same week where I said I'm going to do it without them that the photography kind of came in. And that's why I said they kind of came in at the same time. Call it fate, call it whatever, call it the universe guiding you, whatever. It just went whoop, and they came at the same time. And that stole all of the worry away from me. I sort of put all of that bad negative energy into this hobby because when I was out with the camera and when I was learning photography, it almost erased everything that was going on. And I know it now, but that was actually mindfulness because you're mindful, you're in the moment, you're doing something. And I'd never had that opportunity to do anything like that before. Thinking about it, yeah, maybe gaming's your mindfulness moment. But other than that, I'd never had it. And so that's when the photography kind of hit home for me. And I'm like, this is actually helping me get better. This is slowing the traffic down in my head. This is actually, I did a couple of cones and a couple of lights and a couple of navigation zones to direct thoughts here, here, and here. And it's giving me time to think. It's giving me time to process shit. It's like a defrag for the brain. It was amazing. And the more I did photography, the better I felt. And when I speak to people now in my job, a mental health first aider, a mental health ambassador for the whole company, and a lot of people come to me for chats, and I always use the analogy of your brain is like a jar, and your jar is more often than not always 50% full because you have everyday life to deal with, everyday shit. All right, whether it's someone cutting you up in the morning, whether it's something going wrong, small things, whether it's your job, whether it's your family, whatever. Your jar is always 50% full with some thoughts and processes, right? But then when you start storing trauma and you start storing these thoughts and feelings over your life, your jar becomes 60, 70, 80, 90, and it's 100% full. So then when these little traumas start adding up and adding up and adding up and adding up, now when we talk about trauma, most people say you need a big trauma to be affected mentally. But these little traumas also build up to a big trauma. You know, 10 1Ps make 10p. It's the same thing. So your jar is full. So then when these little traumas happen, well, they can't go in the jar. So they come out, they just keep spilling out and they keep spilling out. And then you can't control that. You've got no more jars to capture it. So you're spiraling out of control and you don't know how to process things. And that's what happens when you don't deal with certain things, when you don't have that acceptance, when you don't understand what's going on with your body, when you don't talk to people. And I do a great thing with the kids in schools, and I've not been in the school since COVID, but I will always bring up one of the girls, and she'll open her hand, and you might have heard this in an interview, but I'll ask her to put a textbook on her hand, and then she'll hold it out, and I'll be like, okay, so that textbook represents that. Now, 25% of your jar, that represents everyday stuff. Then I'll put another textbook on, and then I'll get another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and eventually the hand buckles, and all the books drop. And I'm like, so that signifies a mental health breakdown. That signifies you can no longer hold on to all of them thoughts. You just can't. It's too much, and you've collapsed. So we're going to go again, but I want you to tell me what you can do to help this situation. So I'll go in with 1 book, 2 book, 3 book, and she goes, it's getting heavy. Boom. There's your first trigger point. There's your first moment of acceptance. For you, it's when I'm staying in bed. It's when my bedroom's getting messy. So that's it. You recognize shit is getting heavy, theoretically, you know what I mean? So I'm like, so what are you going to do? You're talking, you're telling me, so I can help. So if you want me to help, talk to me. Big macho man. And he dropped the box, and what did he do? He ate his fucking toe. And I swore. Like 15-year-old kids, they're not scared of a swear word. I was like, and he ate his toe. I was like, and that is why 75% of the suicides are from males. I was like, because none of you agreed to help, none of you wanted to talk, none of you seen the symptoms, because you're all just stuck in this stupid conformity of macho man, go on, blah 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 blah. I was like, and just like a light bulb moment, boom. We're all like, shit, yeah, he's right. And that is why we do what we do as men. Because we want to be macho, we don't want to be seen as weak. was a tough situation. And it was this morning, and I was like, fuck. And I had a cry. 5 weeks crazy challenges. So for me, it's been training as well as photographer. So now I've got two
Mm.
outlets. If anything, the training's took over. It's become a bit of an obsession, to be honest. But um, I have two outlets now. So I'm like, right, if I'm there's no badness, there's no negativity, there's no one looking down and going, you're shit. Mad stuff in there, don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? But I do, if I see a message and it's somebody who's in need of help, I open that up and I'll be able to. And it'll tell you the basics about photography and macro photography, and there's obviously some sick pictures in there too, so go and have a look. And if anything, it shows you, doesn't it? Look, 16 years ago, I tried to kill myself.